if you talk about the living organization, so what are some of the drivers that you think that I should be looking at when it comes to organization? So if I'm living or not living, and if I'm basically evolving at the speed or at the pace that I should be evolving.
Well, design your architecture, any of your structures to evolve, to move, not to be brittle. And so, not just building something and it's, in about 5 years I'll get back to it, or 3 years, knowing that you might need to tinker with it. And that needs to be a first principle. So the ability to continue to work on things and change, even these large infrastructure. I think the other driver is hybrid talent. You have full-time employees that you develop and learn and nurture. You've also got an army of part-time, you can call them gig workers. Some cases are part-time that allow for flex capacity as well as specialization. And then the third member of your team is the machines. It's not a machine, an asset, it's literally a team member. And the concept of work being distributed in a team. We work at some universities, and there's a lot of thinking being put into this notion of team dynamics. And that's something that's important. And then also mention all these small teams. Well, you need to have this shared digital infrastructure that when someone has a good idea or they're trying to get something done, they can use it. They don't have to recreate it. You don't have islands and silos. And that's where you do want a central team, a central platform. So maybe the word platform also, you've got a number of platforms that people can plug into while you're still being distinct. Those are the drivers that we see. There are others, but those are some of the big points. And the last thing, again, I want to iterate is it is human-centric. And it is learning. There's an aggressive learnability that these human beings are learning and keeping skills up. And that ultimately becomes the driver of their success, because we want to remove all the friction. So the only thing left is how motivated are employees to learn, because you can't force somebody to. But that also is a sifter on who should be in your company and not. You need learners, because without that, you are not going to be live.
Fair point. And talk to us about some of the misconception that you unsurfaced, like some of the surprises that you faced or you unsurfaced while working on this book.
Well, there is technology in the book, there is technology in the model, but it's a human-centric approach. There's a lot dedicated to people and behavioral science and how people relate to each other. So misconception is all about the tech. No, it's about the interplay. It's very human-centric. Second, that it's not just for the tech industry, because as Mark Andreessen has said, software is eating the world. Well, it's permeating every industry. So every industry has a dimension of it. So it's not just for people making computers. And the third is that it's not just for large companies. This is applicable to startups and small companies, either because it's what you aspire to be, or you're kind of caught in the middle. You're not a startup, but you don't have the scale of a large company. And so you've got to figure out how you move. So I think these principles are relevant for any size company. And if you're not the largest company, then guess what? You're probably working as part of an ecosystem. And your live enterprise might actually be 2 or 3 or 4 companies working together that take on somebody stronger.
Interesting. So, fair point. So, let's talk about basically who is the ideal reader for this book. Like, so, who is when you think of define the ideal reader for the book?
It's a professional, probably someone in a management capacity who is worried about change. Actually, it's not true. I think that there's the leader who's worried about how they should structure, what they should do to keep up. I mean, let's face it, deep down, in places people might not want to talk about, they are concerned about the Googles and the Facebooks and the Amazons, and they're also a little bit curious. Why can't we be more like that? We were here before they got here. We've done all these great things. Why can't we capture some of that magic? And I think that anyone as a professional or a leader that seeks to figure out how their company and they themselves can be a little more like a digital native, if they're not already, I think that's a good reader. You need to be curious. You need to want to adopt some of these things. If you are, I think that at the individual level or as a manager, it's a fit. And then the other aspect is we've tried to also make it where it's a very entertaining read. In other words, these nature examples pull you in. There is this triple helix where we talk about it relates to DNA and about sustainability, and it really breaks down or deconstructs what stakeholder capitalism is into very practical baling wire and duct tape kind of terms. That this is what it is. And you know what? There are people who are zealots. They just say it's good, you should do it. But you know what? If you don't get the data, if you don't have a rational to back it up, you're not going to pull in the vast majority of people. So we want to say, yes, these are good ideas. And in fact, even more, here's why they're good. Here's what's backing them up. Here's some real challenges we have to overcome before everybody can adopt them. So that's who I think the ideal reader is. We also hope that this is a perennial contribution to the body of knowledge. It's not a bestseller day one, but it's relevant, and we hope it will be for some time.
No, I think so. One thing I find really fascinating with the book. So this is a personal story. So whenever I ask one of my team member to write, prepare a presentation for a client or anyone, I tell them, hey, create 2 slides. So left brain and right brain slide. So left brain, create a natural journey, give sort of the story, and on the right side, just do it data, like throw in data, right? So if I and tell them, hey, just go to even slides and odd slides based on which type you are, and if you care to sneak into the other territory, be at it. So I think one thing that I was reading that book, one of the funny thing was that you had this sort of mix between the nature and the data and the metric. I think that it speaks about like your struggle between the two, and actually bringing that both world together. It's fascinating. I think from that point of view, it's just it hits pretty home when I was reading it.
That's a good insight. That is a good insight. That I'd like to change the word struggle to duality. That while they're separate, that was our way of tying them together, because when we peeled it back, and I have to say this, one of the joys of doing this was talking to so many of these environmentalists or explorers and just leaders out there literally in the field and under glaciers and in icebergs and in the jungles, and that really understood the science and the depths and the complexity behind some of these beautiful things in nature. And to see all that's going on, to me, it became more of a duality than a conflict. And so a goal I had as we wrote this was to bring out that duality, that it wasn't one or the other. They both existed, and that was beautiful. Yeah. And people could still take something, appreciate the beauty, and get the data, and get the rows and columns at the same time.